So I chaired the AGM of the DAIC that year. A section of the AGM provided an opportunity for three prominent business persons to speak about how they navigated through the challenges and the difficulties of business over the years. They were Mrs. Janice Armour, Mr. Gerry Ed, and Mr. Macmillan John Baptist. When I heard the stories of those persons, I thought to myself that this should not be limited to just this one room. And so I threw out a challenge to the media persons who were present on that day and suggested that maybe someone should take on the challenge of creating a platform to allow those persons to share their stories. And so that evening I went home, I thought about it, and I said, but you know what, probably I could take on the challenge. And so I did. I went to Q95, spoke to Mr. Sheridan Gregoire, and at the end of it all, we ended up with Mondays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. for the In the Spotlight radio show. The first show was aired on May 13, 2013, with the first guest being Mrs. Janice Armour, one of those three persons who actually inspired the start of the show from the DAIC AGM. The In the Spotlight radio show, as the name implies, spotlights the lives of the people of Dominica, our people, their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations, their struggles, their challenges, their pains. It provides an opportunity to inspire others and to motivate others as these persons share their stories. The show is aired on Monday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. on Q95 FM radio. And once Facebook Live became a thing, then we started going and utilizing Facebook Live as well. The anniversary show on the 15th will bring us to just over 260 shows, averaging at least 26 shows a year. And in my view, that's not too bad at all. So that's what we're about, the In the Spotlight radio show, and we continue to look forward to doing this as long as we can. I believe persons tuned in the first time and continue to listen to the program, tune into the program. One, I think because of the host, and I believe people like conversational type, human interest stories. And, I think I provide a really good platform, a comfortable platform that persons can come and sit with me like we're in a bar, having a conversation, having a drink. And I think that is one of the reasons why people tune into the program. I believe people love human interest stories, stories where people talk about their lives, their experiences, good or bad. And so, because it's human interest stories, and every time there's the opportunity to hear a new story, new adventures, new challenges, new hopes, new experiences, I think that causes people to return to the program. And I think too the program is very impactful. The fact that it motivates and inspires, people are always looking for that. And I have a story where a very good friend of the show shared with me one time that there was someone they knew that a very night of one of the shows we were having, that person was actually contemplating suicide. And this is not a story, this is actually the truth. And the person was listening to the guest on the show that night, and that literally saved the person's life, because the person chose not to do that on that night of that particular guest. These are the reasons why people tune in to the show. The In the Spotlight radio show audience is very diverse. I have met mothers who have said to me that they allow their children to listen, because of course it is that type of family type program where anyone can listen. There are members of my audience who simply listen via the radio, and that's quite fine for them. There are those who would love to see the guests, and so they tune in via the Facebook Live of the In the Spotlight radio show. There are those who just enjoy the show and they meet me every day and they talk about the show and they talk about that guest I heard you last night and so on. And I really, really enjoy that. I enjoy getting feedback. I enjoy hearing from our guests. There are those who tune in and they comment, they react, they engage, they interact during the Facebook Live. And I appreciate that. There are persons who will send me messages during the show, after the show. They'll send me questions, I really love my audience. And I want to say thank you to them for being here over the last 10 years. There are maybe one or two who may have stopped listening for whatever reason, or who probably just don't have the time. I hope that you can come back to the fold and tune in and join us, especially after the anniversary celebrations. We're really looking forward to having you join us back. Thank you to everyone who listens and supports in any way. So the future of the show continues to be bright. There are still very much many stories to tell. And I look forward to providing a platform to allow persons to tell those stories. There's a lot of areas that I've not gone into. So, for example, farmers. I want to bring more farmers on. I think I've only had one farmer. I want to bring on, a lot of the areas that we've not touched. I'm really looking forward to providing the opportunity for those persons to share their stories with us. So, another 5, maybe another 10 years, who knows? But we intend on continuing. The future of the In the Spotlight radio show is very bright. As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the In the Spotlight radio show, and many persons who know me knows that I'm someone who shows a lot of gratitude. I'm always thankful, I'm always grateful for whoever supports me in any way. And I really would like to say thank you to Mr. Gregoire for providing the platform that I can use to share those stories on the In the Spotlight radio show. I also want to shout out JL Joseph. JL was there at the beginning at Q95 when the In the Spotlight radio show started, and she really worked hard to get some sponsors and to get the show going. She also did, I think, the outro and some other things for the program. So thank you, JL. Thank you to the listeners who consistently tune in and support the program. Those sponsors who have supported us over the years, so very grateful, so very thankful for your support. We're doing our 10th anniversary celebration, and many of you have already come forward to provide some gifts and prizes for giveaways and everything that we're doing. If you would like to make a cash contribution to help us, so I could give GK there something, for his hard work that he's doing. He's all the way at peak at Portsmouth with me today, and definitely, he deserves to be compensated for that. So in whatever way that you can support us, it would be very, very appreciated, and we thank you sincerely. I cannot call everybody's name, but thank you everyone who have come through on this program, supported it any way possible. We are very, very grateful. Very importantly, thank you to the guests who have consented. Some have had to persuade, some since I asked they're okay, because telling your story, telling the world about your life may not be the most comfortable and easiest thing to do, but many of you have come through, you've accepted the challenge, you have accepted the request, and you have made it happen. We thank you so much, and we're looking forward to many more guests coming through. Please remember to follow our In the Spotlight radio show page. We also have a fans page as well. Leave a review on the page. We appreciate reviews. Follow us, like us. Also, we are also on Instagram. We appreciate your support there as well. So again, guys, I'm truly excited to be celebrating 10 years of the In the Spotlight radio show. And I thank all of you again for whatever part you've played throughout the last 10 years.
And truly, I have not much more to say. That was actually a piece that I did that we ran on social media. And I thought, on the Monday that we're actually observing the celebration, the anniversary, that I would air that for you, the radio folks who probably do not have Facebook or YouTube to listen. So thank you so much for taking the time and listening to the information shared there. It means I do not need to share this information anymore as we get ready for tonight's program. I want to use the opportunity, first and foremost, to again thank Mr. Gregoire for this platform, this opportunity to be able to do this. And I just want to reach out and mention some partners who've come on board with some prizes for us for quizzes that we're doing on social media. Majority of it is on social media. I suspect I need to do something for my radio listeners. So we want to say thank you to Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, GBA Enterprises, Bunny's Cakes and Catering, Pamplemousse Goodies and Services, Fine Foods Inc., Tony Sponge, Calaboo House, Great Old House, Jolly's Pharmacy, Dominica Gourmet, Queen to Queen, Body Spa, VF Inc. Youth Series, and VF Inc. Phenomenal Women Series, as well as Perky's Pizza. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, partners, for supporting. And those of you who have provided some cash contribution, at least we've had 2 persons who've done that, 3 persons. So thank you so much. You know yourselves. We invite you to follow our In the Spotlight Radio Show page. That's where the action is with all of the prizes. And folks, we're ready to roll this evening. We have a very, very special guest. If you listen to the recording, you would have heard the background as to why this particular guest is here this evening. And were it not for the DAIC, were it not for Jeffrey Baptiste, my general manager, who recommended me to host the AGM, was it not for Lillian Piper as well, who was the president of the DAIC, and so wasn't it for Mrs. Janice Armo, Mr. Macmillan John Baptiste, and Mr. Gerry Ed. These 3 persons were invited to that AGM and to speak, to share their stories as to how they navigated through the challenges over the years to be able to sustain their businesses. And so they shared, and so I was inspired, and here we are this evening. The interesting thing is that the very first guest was Mrs. Janice Armour. Mr. Macmillan came somewhere along the 10 years, somewhere I think around in the middle, Mr. Macmillan came through. And Mr. Ed, we've not yet had on the program. And so, Mr. Ed called me about something else. It was my intention. I'd actually spoken to one of his sons about it. I wanted Mr. Ed for my 10th anniversary program. Mr. Ed called me about something else. I don't know if he really wants me to declare what he called me about. And at the same time, I'm saying to him, well, I'm trying to find you, Mr. Ed. And then I said to him, this is what I want you for. He said, no, I'm not really, I said, can I come over to your office to speak to you? And he allowed me. So, once I got to that office, that was it, right? So we are here this evening as we celebrate 10 years of the In the Spotlight Radio Show. And I'm making history this evening with Mr. Gerry Ed. He'll tell us if he's still the managing director, if he has retired, if he comes ever so often, whatever the case might be. Mr. Ed, an absolute pleasure to have you, sir, this evening. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Fernanda, and thank you so much for encouraging me to come again. I didn't want to, but I said
you did not.
Such a special occasion. I need to support you, and I would like to congratulate you on all that you have done over the last 10 years. It's not easy in Dominica to maintain things, but you've done it. Congratulations, and please keep going.
Thank you, sir, for that. I know you warned me about this, sir. I suspect I just can't help it. Mr. Ed, anyone you want to just say good evening to, everyone listening and tuned in with us this evening?
I'm not sure who know about the program, but
trust me, they know.
Anyways, just to the family and everyone at the church, I hope I say the right things, and that it will be a program that they will remember and enjoy.
Mr. Ed, I'm not going to ask you your age, but what I'll say to you is that you look very good. Your skin is really nice and young looking. I don't mean to make you blush, but you look very good, sir. I have to say that to you.
Well, thank you very much. It makes me feel good to have somebody like you say I look good, and whoever makes me feel good, thank you very much.
But you're not going to tell us the age.
Well, I was 80 last year.
You were 80 last
Yes,
year.
5th of September 1942 is when I was born.
Oh my goodness.
But I need to thank the good Lord for taking care of me.
And how are you health-wise?
I'm pretty good, except for a couple of knees and my hip.
Okay.
And that's thanks to Windsor Park before the new Windsor Park. We used to play a lot of football there. And of course, it was quite an uneven surface, big boulders sticking up, a lot of old grass and stuff. And it wasn't the safest or the most comfortable place. And of course, I was the goalkeeper, which made it even worse. So
you were a goalkeeper?
Yes, I was, yes.
For what team?
Well, there were various teams. There was Blackburn, there was Emerald. I think I played a couple of games for Newtown, but I wasn't a member of the club. And I think it was Blackburn was probably the most, the longest one that I was with.
But other than that, you are healthy and you are well.
Thank God for that. Yes.
I'm sorry I had to have you climb up those stairs tonight.
No, it's because of the old knee, but we'll deal with the old knee.
Yes.
The important thing is that all my problems are outside. I can see them.
Thank God.
Hopefully there's nothing going on inside in some little dark corner of my body.
I hope so. I'm at 80 going on 81.
Right.
We thank God for that.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
I am intrigued, first and foremost, by the last name, Ed. Can you put it into context for us as to...
Ed is a Scottish name. There are lots of lairds and Ed, Adaires, and so on. It's all origins in Scotland. And the Ed family to which I belong, or from which I came to Guyana sometime in the 1800s. And from Guyana, they came to Dominica. I understand, although I've never met any of them, there are Eds in other islands. But basically, it was from the Isle of Skye in Scotland, apparently.
Isle of Skye?
Yeah, S-K-Y-E.
So you're Scottish?
Well, yes, I have Scottish roots. And there are a few Eds around the place that that are supposedly related. The one I can remember was I think it was the manager or the chairman of Hilton Hotel, who's now retired, probably dead by now. I used to meet him a couple of times in my days of representing Dominica in the Tourist Board. But there are one or two other people who come in from time to time, and there's no family tree as such.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one, of course, which is of interest, is on my grandfather's side, Whitchurch. That is typical English, and I have one or two people that are closer to me. There's one person I keep in touch with in England who, his great-grandfather was my great-grandfather, Whitchurch's brother. Mm. So that's what, second cousin, third cousin, or something like that. But that's basically what it is.
So tell me about how the Eds came to Dominica, and give me the Whitchurch connection as well.
Well, the Whitchurches...
Make sense for us.
Well, the Whitchurch came here sometime in the late 1800s to manage some estates in Dominica. In particular, I think there was the one at Wesley. And then he was an auctioneer, and he set up a business in Roseau in 1910. Lloyd's Agents, shipping agency, and various other things which I really not sure of. But during those early days became agents for Austin Morris cars, vehicles, whiskey. Then we had a little shop which was underneath the building which is presently our Western Union property there. And it expanded into all sorts of different things that we are today. The heirs he married Whitchurch's daughter. and that's a connection.
Ah.
He fought in the First World War, and after the war, or during the war, he was injured, not severely that he couldn't continue life. And he came to Dominica to work in public works, and then he got involved with the churches, and as I said, married my great grandmother. Yeah, so that's a connection.
Interestingly, Mr. Ed, the lane outside of your building is called Drury Lane.
Yes.
We had no clue, and I'll give you a little story. One of my colleagues lost, I think it was her earpiece or something, and we were trying to track it. And the tracker was showing that it is somewhere on Drury Lane. Somewhere on Drury Lane? Where is Drury Lane? And then today, when I was doing my little research, I saw that that is in fact the lane, Drury Lane.
Yes, I think it's named after a famous lane in London, where a lot of the theatres are, I think. Yes.
So
that lane connects Long Lane right through until also Great George. Well, it comes out on Kennedy Avenue. Yeah.
As you mentioned the lanes, Mr. Ed, not to digress, the many of us, myself included, we're not very familiar with all of the lanes around Roseau. Are you?
I used to be, but over time, and having no need really to go to these places and so on, you just tend to forget. You remember the main streets and so on, yes.
Okay, so you said you don't necessarily have a family tree, but let us go back a bit and share with us who came to Dominica. Is it your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather, Richard.
Your great-grandfather.
And my grandfather, J.O. Ed, came also, but at a later date, from Guyana, where he was born, and then he joined the West India Regiment, fought in the First World War, some of the major battles, and he eventually came to Dominica. I don't know really why. Got married to Richard's daughter, and there we are.
And there we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so who was your mother and who was your father?
My mother, she was J.O.Ed's daughter.
Uh-huh.
And my father died long time ago, and I didn't know him at all.
You didn't know him at all?
No. So my grandfather brought me up, J.O.Ed.
Okay, all right. But do you remember much about your mom?
Yes, she lived in Canada. She got married and went to live in Canada. And sorry?
Come closer to the mic.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
She left here, was working in Trinidad, got married, and went to live in Trinidad. She went to live in Canada, and where she lived all her life. She would visit Dominica from time to time, usually once a year, and she died in 1997. And she's buried in the Anglican cemetery.
And that was your
grandmother.
My
mother.
Your mother.
Yes.
So does that mean you grew up outside of Dominica?
No. I grew up here.
You grew up here?
Yes. She left here at an early age. My grandparents brought me up.
Oh, your grandparents brought you up. Tell me about them, Mr. Ed. How much do you remember about them? What were the things they taught you as a young boy growing up?
Well, my grandmother was a very serious person. I was a little afraid of her. But she was very good for me. In other words, she looked after me very well. My grandfather was a short, stocky man. He used to dress in a white linen suit to go to work. In the heat of Roseau. Yeah, linen. Well, linen, yeah, it was linen. Perfectly thing. And loved whiskey and soda. And in those days, it was all white people in the Dominica Club, so he was one of those people. But a very generous man, and he really laid the foundation for the church which was there at the time to expand, and then I came back to take it over.
You came back to take it over. In terms of your grandparents, what are some of the life lessons that they taught you?
Well, I think, to be honest, honesty, to be polite, gentlemanly. Everybody is somebody, no matter who they are, how poor they might be, or how rich they might be. But you have to respect them and take them for what they are. They have their faults, they have their good points, whatever it is, and that is, I think, but it is the question of being concerned about people. And somebody, if you can help somebody that is not as fortunate as you are, it's really an obligation to do that.
And you feel that you've lived out those principles that they taught you?
Well,
the best
try
you
to.
could.
Maybe I'm not the person to answer that, but yeah, I would think so. I don't like bad manners. I don't like scruffiness.
Mm-hmm.
You can be poor, but you can be well dressed in whatever you can afford to buy, to wear. And you can be polite. I know nowadays it's politeness and decency. Sometimes things are forgotten. They're very important.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up at Mont Bruce until I was born in 1942. I went to Barbados to school. I think it was 1950, 8 years old. I used to travel on the Grumman Cruise, the seaplane that used to come to Portsmouth. And we would travel from Rosa to Portsmouth, either on the crash launch, which was a fast sort of air sea rescue type of vessel with some seats, comfortable seats. Or you would go as far, I think it was Cornwall or Salisbury, and then a drive as far as there. And then you could get on either I think it was a Lady Bernadette owned by R.B. Douglas that would travel up and down between Portsmouth and Rosa. Quite an experience. And when we got to Portsmouth, we had some friends at the Pickard House, which is I think it's bought by some English people now, and it's one of the stately estate houses overlooking the Pickard area, where you have all these buildings that are put up for the Russian University students. We'd spend the morning there, and then all of a sudden you'd hear this noise coming over there. You see this little plane coming in and landing with the wash of the waves on either side, coming towards the shore. And it carried 4 big seats and 2 little box seats. And it was always amazing when it was coming with terrible roar and engines, and all of a sudden when it got to the shore, they had a little anchor that they would throw over the front of the plane, and the peace, everything was quiet. And all of a sudden, your passenger would hear creak, creak, as the rowing boat now that was coming alongside to take you out and bring you ashore. And that was quite an experience. But then of course, towards the end, more people were traveling that lived in the south, so they shifted to Soufrière Bay. But once again, there was no road connecting Soufrière with Roseau, so you had to go by launch.
By launch?
Yes. To travel to Soufrière to pick up the plane. And there is a building there now, I think it's something with tourism, right on the front there, and that is where immigration and customs were. And then you had upstairs was a sort of a restroom, and there was a little wooden sort of jetty which you were able to use to go onto the plane. But it was quite an experience going to school in Barbados with friends and so on, and getting excited, getting into this little plane, going to Martinique, landing on dry land, and then from Martinique to Barbados.
A couple of things, Mr. Ed. Around that time, what were our roads like? So to get to Collingwood or Salisbury, wherever you said it would come through.
Well, it was pretty rough, but there's narrow roads, because there were not many cars in the 40s, but quite possible.
Did your family have a car?
Yes. I think it was number 8, something like that.
Number 8.
Yes, because everybody knew everybody's number.
Right.
And of course,
because there were so few.
Exactly. And of course, there was no problem to park. Not like this.
I like that. So that's one, Mr. Ed. And then I want to find out how long it took. So you said you got to Martinique first,
Yes.
and then to Barbados.
And then that was the end of our
Journey.
But then the plane would go on to St. Lucia and I think St. Vincent. Probably all in one day, as far as I remember. Then they probably stay the night or something, and then come back. They come back up through the chain of islands.
Do you remember how long it took to get to the point of Martinique and then to Barbados?
Not really.
Not really.
We were so busy looking and talking and carrying on because then rather wondering how long it would take.
So what would happen when you get to Martinique though?
You just stay on the plane. Yeah. Because they landed on dry land.
Mm-hmm.
I think in St. Lucia.
Is it to pick up stuff? What would they?
Yeah,
what
pick
would
up,
be the reason?
pick up, drop people, pick up people like it is today.
Like 6'6", Mr.
Yeah, but that's all they were. I was not old enough to travel on the WL Unicia, a very large wooden schooner that was owned by Captain Joseph, who lived in Portsmouth, and some of the other people I can remember, Anthony Agar, the Agars who lived at Lahore, in the heights of Point of Lugia. He was older than I, and he used to travel on the WL Unicia. And it was quite an experience because they would probably be loading copra in Portsmouth to transport to Barbados, where they would use the copra to make soap. So you can imagine this rancid copra smell on the WL Unicia, becalmed between Roseau and Point and Scott's Head before it got into the channel, where you would pick up the wind and then you would be able to move ahead. So that was an experience that unfortunately I never had because I was not
old enough. Yes. Why did you have to go to Barbados to go to school?
Because the school still exists today called Lodge School, and a lot of the boys from the small islands like St. Kitts, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, myself, Dominica, would go to that school. I think it was a boarding school, so that was the attraction.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what school was like?
It was a wonderful experience. We boarded in a plantation house because I wasn't actually boarding at the school, Lodge School, because there was a limited number of boys, but there was one of the masters of the school had this arrangement with this plantation house, and there were proper rooms and so on. So there were, I think, about 20 or 30 of us from all the islands, and we used to go to Lodge School every day to school.
What subjects were taught at that time?
Basically, usual biology, chemistry, English, literature, English language, French. I think French was the only foreign language.
So tu parles français?
Oui. No.
Un petit peu?
So it was a wonderful experience. And when the coronation was held last week, I think it was, I remember 1953, I was at school in Barbados, and we had to get up that particular day, the day of the coronation, dress up in our blazers and ties, and go to Bridgetown, where they had a big parade and so on. Typical Little England, Barbados, Little England, And I was speaking to Anthony Agar the other day, and he remembers it as well because he was in the cadet corps, and he was part of the celebrations as well. And that particular day, which was very exciting for England, I would think, because news had come through that Sherpa Tenzing and Hillary, who was a New Zealander, had just climbed Mount Everest.
Oh.
It was the first time human beings had gone to the top. So it was quite a day. I always remember that.
Mr. Ed, this conversation is quite fascinating so far for me, and I'm sure the audience feel very much the same. And that is what I was looking forward to on this program, and I'm already getting it. I'm interested in knowing how long you went to school in Barbados.
I was there from 1950 to 55. then I found myself going to school in England. But the Barbados was a wonderful experience because every single morning we get up at 5 and this plantation house is out in the country in St. Philip, which at that time was a pretty country area. And every morning we had to go and take a half an hour run in the cane piece, in the cane field, and come back and do exercises. And I think that is where my interest in sport as a participant and nowadays following football and cricket and whatever it is. That was quite an experience. And then we would be taken to Bridgetown every Saturday so we could go and do some shopping if we wanted to. And I remember I used to go to the Carenage where all the schooners used to be. And it was very interesting because a lot of the schooners that used to trade between Dominica and Barbados would be in the Carenage. And then in later years, when I came to work at Whitchurch, many of those schooners would call in Dominica, and I had quite a friendship going with them.
At the end of the 5 years that you did in Barbados, what would be what type of certification would you get?
Well, I left before I had any certificates on, because I was 42 to 58. I was just about 12, 11, 12 when I went to England. When I went to England, I had to go to what is called a prep school, which recognized as the precursor to public school. And the public school in England I didn't go to Eton or Harrow, but I went to one of those types of schools. So at that time, the educational system in the Caribbean, at least in Dominica, was a year behind England. So I had to go to this prep school to kind of study intensely to be able to pass the common entrance to go to the public school.
Mm-hmm. How many times you had to make the trip to Barbados, by the way? I wanted to find out.
Well, every holidays.
Every holidays.
Yes.
So that would be...
That'd be 3 times going and 3 times coming back.
3 times going.
Yeah,
Did you always look forward to it?
Oh yes, Barbados was okay. It was close to home because Caribbean, well, I didn't know anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So there were friends there, and they're friends for life, so to speak. In fact, I understand in September they're having a grand reunion of all the large boys who are still alive to come to Barbados for a week of remembrances and enjoying and renewing friendships and so on. But it's the wrong time of the year, right in the middle of the hurricane season.
Mm.
Although it's not too far from Dominique if anything was to happen.
But God spare, do you plan on going?
I would like to go, yes.
You would like to go, yes. You mentioned going to Barbados, and you mentioned friends. I want to find out if you had any siblings.
I have one half-sister from Canada, but she lives in Canada, but she comes here. She's been here a few times, but she's a Canadian and she's quite happy.
Okay.
Yes.
But she visits?
Well, not for many years.
Okay.
Well, I say many years, but not for a few years.
Not for a few years. So it was practically you.
Me alone, yes.
So you had to have friends. What was that like?
I'm accustomed doing my own thing. Looking after myself.
What was that like, Mr. Ed? All this time?
You always have friends always around you. So if
Yes.
you're not up to anything, there's somebody there to give you a push-up.
So you had good friends?
Yes.
So outside of Barbados, tell me generally about the time that you spent in Dominica growing up in Montrose.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you remember in terms of life growing up as Gerry?
Montrose was not a country by that time, but there was no Kings Hill. There was a massive bush and so on, because all of that area was part of the fortifications for the British. Like, of course, the Montrose at the top where the police training center was the fortifications, and they going back to the 1700s and so on. They would have the British forces would be there, the resident forces. So there was nothing, and there were a few houses up on from leaving where the Dominica Club was going up. Maybe 1, 2 Presbytery for the Anglican Church was there. Then you had a few Framptons, and then went up. and then a few bigger houses at the top, and more where you go to by the cross. But it was all country.
Ooh.
And of course, I had a wonderful time. I mean, I was all over the place. I remember we had a gang of us with the cowboys and Indians, which was the thing at that time, and turkey feathers and chicken feathers, and of course, all the lice, all in your hair, and silly things like that. And of course, going to the river, spending the whole day there, sometime in the sea, and so on. Of course, one pays for all of that because there was no shirt on you.
You burnt.
Yeah, all over the place. Mm-hmm. Wonderful times going down to Carnival as a spectator. Well looked after, and of course, in those days it was, I suppose you could say, spoiled in a way.
You're an only child.
Yeah, well, yes, that too, but I never really sort of worked on that. But once again, friends, family, and not family so much, but friends around the place, so you were never alone.
How is the memory remembering some of the friends that you had back then?
Yeah, I lose, but a lot of them have passed on. Okay. Some have gone to other places and lost contact.
Okay. Something I really would like to hear from you, as we're still, within this sphere of that element of the conversation. You told us what Monbrus looked like back then. How much can you tell us about what Roseau looked like back then?
Let me just finish Monbrus.
Right, go ahead.
The house that I live in was called Trilamede.
The house had a name?
It was called Trilamede. It was a church-owned house, and the Josephs own it now. It is the second house on the Morn. And we lived there, and the first schooling I had was with the two daughters of Arrow Smith, who was the administrator in the 40s. And the three of us would go to school there, and there was a Canon Eversley, who was in charge of the Anglican Church at the time, and with his wife, and we would go to school there in the morning. And I always remember I could never spell Mississippi. That's one thing I remember. And it was more like a play school. And then from that I went to convent. That was interesting because it's the same convent that is there today. But of course, in those days, the only building at the bottom there was a long sort of wooden, like a slave hut then type long thing, and it was in very bad shape. There was a huge breadfruit tree right in the center. And of course, there was no concrete, it was dusty and so on. And the entrance now was on the side of Valley Road. There's a rather intricate entrance there in the hedge, because where the entrance is now was the entrance in those days. And of course, there were those nuns, Mother Borgia, Mother Christiani, and they really were wicked. I shouldn't speak ill of the dead. But they had a ruler, and the ruler had a little sort of metal strip at the end, and if you misbehaved, they would give you a couple of shots with that on your knuckles, and then put you to kneel down with how many Hail Marys and so on before you could allow to get up. And it really was rough. Anyway, but I think it was good in a way because I learned discipline from that. No matter who you are, you gotta sit down. When we had these slates and with the chalk, we had exercise books as well. But sometimes if you really behave badly, they would give you lines to do, where you had to go and write 100 lines. I will behave myself with this wonderful long handwriting. So that was before I went to school in Barbados. Just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, I appreciate that, and I also want, before we get back to the Roseau and you giving us a sense of what it was like. Somebody said you were a very good goalkeeper, very flamboyant, meaning I guess you would do all of those fancy things.
That's why I have two bad knees and No, sometimes in Roseau up to today, fellas who remembered play football, they would say, "Boy, Edman, they give you a little boost up.
So you only served as a goalkeeper?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you choose goalkeeping?
When I went to school in England, I was goalkeeper as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any other sports?
Yes, I used to play field hockey.
Field hockey?
Yes, and I actually used to, because when I was in England, I lived in Bedford with a family that were good friends of my family here, because I didn't know of any Aero church people in England at that time. And I played field hockey for Bedfordshire, like Bedfordshire County, which was a great experience. And they would have Easter festivals down in the south of England. And we'd have some teams coming from France and Belgium and so on to play in this Easter hockey. So it was really quite an experience. And I was very sorry when I came back to Dominica. That was one of the disappointments, was that there was no hockey.
Yeah.
But I played cricket as well and athletics, and I swam for the school as well.
But you were a full sportsman, Mr. Ed, a full sportsman you were. All right, so we're going to take a break for a moment. We still have to talk about school in England and what happened there. And then we'll come back, we'll circle back to Roseau and what Roseau looked like before. We have quite a bit to talk to Mr. Ed about as we continue this anniversary special program with Gerry Ed. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. I just want to say thank you to Fine Foods Inc. for providing me with the single barrel Angostura rum. I hope Mr. Ed has a little drink, sometime. We also want to thank Josephine Gabriel and Company for the bottle of wine. And then we also have some dinner for Mr. Ed. It's takeaway, Mr. Ed, from the Great Old House. So we want to thank Mr. Mr. Leonard for that. And we also have a goodie box of some good stuff, and the person said to me, which is Mr. Ronald Astafan of Pamplemousse Goodies and Services, it'll come shortly. He said to me, I really try to take Mr. Ed, whenever he caters, he always likes a little local in his stuff, so he tried to make sure he put in something for you in there. So we just want to say thank you to the sponsors of those items this evening, so that I could contribute a token there to my guest tonight. We're coming back. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. Stick around with us. So much more to come.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
And we are back. Mr. X, someone who is listening actually sent a photo. Oh, careful, it's all right. Yes. A photo of the plane that you actually went on.
I think we have it in this year's calendar.
Yes?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
We'll talk about those calendars as well that you do every year. So this is the In the Spotlight radio show. Just stick around with us. We're coming right back. Perfect. 8:57 is the time in the studios. Really loving this. So, Mr. Ed, we went to England to study. Tell us more.
But before that, you also about Roseau.
Yes, well, whichever way we want to take it.
Let's take Roseau.
Let's take Roseau.
Roseau was a sleepy little town.
Sleepy.
Yes. And very clean.
Oh.
Very, very clean, despite the fact that there were a lot of little old wooden houses. But you could see that an effort was done to maintain it properly. And that there was respect for people. And you would find a lot of the older people, as anytime they would pass a female, a lady, they would doff their hat, you know. And
we did that in Roseau.
Yes, just did the hat. You know. I remember one in particular, Mr. Lockett, Randy Lockett, was famous for that. You know, his straw hat, not straw hat, but his felt hat, but very, you know, civilized. Parking was not a problem because they hardly had anything.
This parking thing is really effective, right?
A lot of what you call it, a lot of bicycles around, and of course, Bath Estate was a large lime producing area there. So there was a sort of a country feel. There was no, let's say, goodwill. There were no houses up there. There were just fields of whatever it was at the time. Right at the top, there was a big house. The botanical gardens were first class, well maintained. You were not allowed to just go in there and misbehave. There were gates, there were warders that would walk around and keep an eye on things. Respectful again. Then you had the schools were there and so on. It was just a quiet, simple little place. And people just got on with their life, very poor. I remember the hospital was where the government headquarters is, and I think there was only one private room top before it ended. Across the road where you have the forecourt was a very large area, which is a maternity ward at the time. But that was the hospital. And then of course, the police headquarters was Fort Young. I'm talking about 40s.
Yes, of course.
Because it was a fort, but by the middle of the 1800s, the war, there were no more war in the Caribbean, so to speak, no French-English battles for the islands. Everything went back to Europe. So the Fort Young was used as police headquarters. And you hear people, up until maybe 20 years ago, you hear older people say, Mokali 4, we're going to make a complaint, because the charge office was at the front where you're going to Fort Young. And one of the things I remember as a child, anybody, let's say passing by the river, once they crossed the line of the cathedral, they would turn and just not genuflect,
genuflect,
or maybe make the sign of the cross.
Yes.
Which was always something that struck me. You know. So those were the sort of basic things that I remember. And of course, when there was a funeral, people would walk, and then you had to carry the coffin. And you can imagine somebody dying in the middle of Roseau, and you have to go up Constitution Hill to go to the cathedral, and it's a big person, and there was lots of little things like that.
What about the business landscape? What was that like?
Well, you had a lot of small businesses. There was no big supermarkets or large establishments. A lot of small ones around the place. That's what I basically remember.
So that is the picture that you have of Roseau back then. And I'm just going to ask you to just make a comparison as to where we are today in terms of the city of Roseau.
That's not fair, because
it
spoil our together, because it's very disappointing.
Oh.
There's no organization now. People do what they want, park where they want. I don't know what is going to happen. There's a plan for the city. But it's not it's clean in a way, but you have all these vehicles around the place. It's just sad, very sad. A lot of the older buildings are being pulled down. Obviously, the owners want to do that, that's their right. Some of the historic locations being used for other things. So a lot of the charm, the things that people come to Dominica to see, there's concrete all over the world, but people come to see things. They want to know the stories of this old house or this particular area, piece of land, whatever it is. This church, this cathedral, and I hope we don't destroy all of them, because we become like everywhere else.
The cost of development, people might say.
Well, yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
Modernization and all of that.
Yes, but you can somehow or the other maintain some of these places by proper, I don't know, building codes or whatever it is. But that's a subject by itself, which I.
But not necessarily going into too much detail. There seems to be a few things that pains you in terms of the city, and maybe by Dominica by extension, probably. But a few things you would like to see done would be, give me 3 things.
Well, first of all, a plan for parking. That's number 1. Number 2, a plan for vending, where vendors have a place which is not on a street corner, on a street, but somewhere that is decent, where there are facilities and they're treated like human beings, and which it isn't right now. It's just a mad scramble. Mm-hmm. The third thing I would think is the organization of events. What is happening where? Where can this one could be done without disrupting other people's lives who are not in that particular thing? Planning, in other words. The city needs to be planned without destroying the beautiful things and the interesting historical architectural things, and still have a modern city. But it's parking, vending, and this question where anybody can put up anything anywhere and it's accepted.
Mm-hmm. You need to see some changes there. While we're on that topic, Mr. Ed, I want to just, there was an article in 2010, I think it was on News Online Dominica or something of the sort. And the headline of the article was, Dominica is not ready to welcome visitors to the island. Not clean, hospitable to welcome visitors. And you were being quoted in the article as saying that. That was about 12 or 13 years ago in 2010. Do you still feel that way? And do you think anything has been done since then to improve?
I would think that there are certain things that have been done in the sense of hotels, guest houses. Standards have increased, but you still have the melee that was there and is still here with us today. And if we're going to, people come here and they enjoy what they see, but at the end of it all, you have to be able to keep abreast with cleanliness, organizing, and so on, because of a proper pavements and so on. I know there's a plan to have proper pavements and put all utilities underground in certain streets. Fine, but do you then allow the vending to go on those new things? So, I don't know. But I think this is a subject that really needs to be looked at by all people concerned. Why people have to make a living, yes, but they need to make a living in comfortable surroundings. Yes, the cars are coming in, but you need to be able to put somewhere where they can go and get out from this complete mess that there is right now.
And I'm definitely with you on that one, Mr. Ed, right there. Where your company is located. Flow, where I work, is right next door. Every day we have the challenge of the vendors right in front of those locations. And like you rightly said, everyone needs to earn a living. And I know the person that you are, based on what your grandparents taught you. You want these people to make a living, but it's just that, it has to be done in a proper, structured manner to the benefit of both the vendors and the consumers, those who are coming to purchase from them. So while we're here, Mr. Ed, let's jump into business. We have a few things to cover.
What about England now?
What about England? Did we miss England?
I wasn't in business then.
Okay.
So it's up to you.
So we're gonna do that. I like that, Mr. Ed. Help me to get back on track. Before you got into business, you were in England studying, and we didn't find out what happened after that. So let's go.
Okay, well, I was in Barbados, and then I was decided, my grandparents decided to go to school in England. So all the arrangements were made, and I went to England by boat. It was called Fives and Elders. It was a banana company, a British company, and they had a vessel called the Golfito. Golfito, yes. And that vessel I had to go to Barbados to pick up the vessel. And I went with a family who in fact were schoolmaster at same lodge with his family. They had a contract, lodge contract had come to an end, and they decided to go back to England. So we were very friendly with them, my family, so I accompanied them. So they looked after me because I was, how old was I? 12 years old, 1955, 42, 55 is how much? 13 years? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to them, so they got on this boat. It was a part passengers and part cargo. From Barbados, we went to Trinidad, spent a few days there, loading cargo, loading bananas, and from Trinidad we went to Jamaica, where we went to Kingston, and then everybody had to get off the ship, and we had some friends. People I was with had some friends in Mandeville, in the center of Jamaica. So we had a few days there. First time I felt cold in my life because it was fairly high up in the mountains there. And then we had to find ourselves at Port Antonio, which was a banana export port for all of Jamaican bananas. And I remember when the day came when we set sail, I actually cried because in my mind, I said, my God, I'm leaving the Caribbean, that's all I know, going across the Atlantic Ocean to go to school in England. But anyway, soon got over that, and we arrived in Southampton eventually, and I was amazed by two things. First of all, the tides. I don't know if you've ever been to England.
I've not.
Well, sometimes the tide is very high,
Okay.
and sometimes it's very low. And when it's low, you see the surface of the seabed, and all the ships and so the smaller ones, will be on the side. And then all of a sudden, tide would come in, and there was this wonderful bay again with ships, sort of thing. And I had never seen so many white people in one place. It sounds stupid, but and that was the two things that anyway, it was the summertime.
But you look like that, Mr.
I know, I didn't think that. Anyway, then that was the summer, and then of course went to school down in the south of England, and little did I know what kind of weather was waiting for me. Because don't forget, 1955 was only 10 years after the end of the Second World War, 1945. So England was still in a state. Houses, most of them had open fires and no central heating and so on. So it was very rough. And the school I went to was supposed to toughen you up. Cold water in the mornings, get up out of bed and wash your face in cold water. Sometimes it was a little bit of ice as if on the water. Anyway, I survived all of that, and then we went to public school, which was for 5 years, which was wonderful because I got a pretty good education there. And then I worked for 1 year with Lloyd's. And one day I was sitting down in a restaurant or some place to have a meal. Left work to have a meal, and I suddenly heard a Barbadian accent. So I said, well, sounds like somebody I know. Went around, and there was one of my best friends from Lord's School in Barbados who had been sent to England to study insurance in the same way that I was studying insurance at Lloyd's. And we met up. And we both of us said, you know, what are we doing here? We have family businesses in thing. Let's get home.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, we just said it's time to go back. And I've missed a few years of England, but that was the sort of thing that we came to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are we doing here? Let's go and work for ourselves. And that was 1960, for me, 1964.
1964.
And
What was your friend's name?
Tommy Pierce.
Tommy
He's dead
Pierce.
now.
Okay, yes, passed on.
Passed on. But that's 58 years ago. In November, whatever it was, 1964, I walked into Whitchurch.
So you, so
58 years.
So Tommy
Yes.
encouraged you.
No, both of us.
You encouraged each
Yeah,
other.
we said, what are we doing here? You know, let's go back. You know, we've done our share of whatever, school and university, and we have education, and let's go back.
So you started. You worked for 1 year. You said.
Yes, just about.
Just about a year there.
In fact, it was just about 10 years, 55 to 64, 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
So between school, a few years at university, and then 1 year working up.
So you pack away to England. Not really.
No, time to come home.
Time to come home. And you decided, what was the trip back home like?
Well, in all the years I was in England, I think it's only 3 times I came.
Okay.
But by that time, there was British Airways Overseas Corporation, BOAC, and I remember it used to go, when we were coming up from Barbados, on BOAC, Barbados, Bermuda, Gander, Newfoundland, across to Reykjavik, which was in Iceland, down to Prestwick in Scotland, and eventually down to London. That is how the route.
That was a route.
Yeah.
I again, just like your friend who was on last week, Mr. Ed, I must commend you for your memory. You know, you seem to remember quite a bit at that stage of your life. And I think that is impressive. And I really like that you can give us so many details. I mean, you were actually giving us the roots 58 years ago, you know. So, you know, that is quite impressive. And I'm sure those who are viewing and listening will definitely agree. So you decided you're coming back home to Dominica, you and your friends. So Tommy went to Barbados,
yes.
And you came to Dominica.
Yes.
And you came to Dominica to what?
I came to the family business, which was established, and it was still going on. And when I got here, it was what we were doing. It was a small upstairs of, because in 1961, the original buildings were destroyed by fire.
I read
Right.
that
So
somewhere.
you had the block that we occupy today. But at that time, in 1964, we had to move to the present Western Union building, which was owned by Elrose and Company. And we bought it a few days after the fire in 1961. And whatever was left from the other original building, we moved across. And interestingly, it was a building, it's a very old building, that one, where we are today, and it was used by Elrose and Company to pay farmers who bought limes to the Lacouture, which was the Elrose and Company factory in
Bath
Estate. It was called Lacouture. It was a French name for the area, and they would come to this particular place to get the money for the limes that they had supplied. You know? So then. When I came back in '64. Then we had the small shop. We had insurance, shipping. We had agency for Austin cars. We had rally bicycle. It was a very popular thing, and various other things which were there. And as time went on, we purchased where we still had the burnt out a lot, parts of the original block.
And that is where exactly today?
Yes.
The part that got burnt was where exactly today?
It was most of that complete block.
Okay.
And Royal Bank was on the corner facing Prevo Mall and what you call it, on Kennedy Avenue. You have courts on one side. In that particular corner was where Royal Bank was.
Okay.
And then there was there was a hit parade, which was some music place with perfumes and so on. And then we continued to the rest of the building we owned, and that's where the fire was. And you come around up to the lane now, where we had the Paz Hotel, which was right on that corner. And there was one little section which was owned by about 4 or 5 people. And we had a great difficulty to get them to sell. Some people wanted to sell, some were dead, some it was a story. And I remember when we finally got through, I signed a check for $125,000. That must have been 1960, 64, maybe sometime. I was afraid. $125,000.
That's a lot of money.
The hand shook when I had to sign it. But that gave us a whole lot.
Right.
Complete lot.
Okay.
And then in 90, there was the supermarket, and then we built the offices and stuff upstairs. So that was a move from the small building across. And then we, from then on, we went through different things.
Well, a day like today, Mr. Ed, that 125,000 would be a few millions.
Oh, yes.
Definitely a few millions. So when you came back and came into the business, in what area did you get involved?
I started with shipping and insurance. Mr. Deloney, Rodney Deloney, Senior Deloney's father, was the sort of manager there, and I was working with him. And there was a lady called Cynthia Lestrade. She's been in the States for years and years and years. Her father was Scully Lestrade, who was the town clerk at the time. So those are 2 people, and that I remember, especially Mr. Deloney. He did a lot to get things going. So I worked with him. And then 1971, I became manager. And, 71, yeah. And that's continued from there until the end of last year.
Which one of your family members was actually running the business when you came back?
There was my grandfather's second wife.
Your grandfather's second wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Bernice, she was an ATM from Scott's Head.
Okay. Okay. In terms of
she was a sister. That's another story, but she lives in Australia now. She's in her 90s. But one of her sisters was Ursula Harris.
Okay. Yes.
From Scott's Head. So she was in charge of the business at the time.
It would be interesting to know, in terms of your grandfather.
He died in 68.
I was about to ask, when did he pass on?
He died in 68, but she was married to him.
She was married to him.
She continued to operate as a manager.
Okay.
68, 61, 68 to 71, yeah.
71.
And then she left, she went overseas.
She went overseas,
yeah.
And you took up the mantle.
Right.
You took up the mantle.
Exactly.
And when you took up the mantle, Mr. Ed, what type of business? How was that business positioned at that time? What did you take on? Did you take on a thriving business?
Yes.
It was a thriving business.
Yes, but a smaller business.
But
But you have to think of what Dominica was in 64.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wasn't born yet.
Dominica, we were still a colony.
Yes.
Because we still there were people from England running the place until 67, when we became associated states. We got responsibility for internal affairs and so on. But there was no Deepwater Harbor, so the ships would anchor in Roseau, and everything had to come ashore on lighters. There was a sort of a telephone system that was mostly in Roseau, and it was situated in the lane, Paul Green, across that lane, long lane, one of those nice buildings. And if you had to get to Portsmouth, you'd have to go, you would ring, you had to exchange, and I want to speak to, I think it was Collie who had an exchange. So you get as far as Collie, and then you have to call your exchange with them, who you want to speak to in Portsmouth, and they would to connect the thing. So it was very kind of thing. There was, of course, no television, no cell phones. It was a completely different world. And the half day was on a Thursday. It was a half day midweek on a Thursday. So you work until 12 o'clock, and then that was it. And then you had to work whole day Saturday. So then I was able, I don't remember exactly when that was, but I stopped this half day on a Thursday and had the half day on a Saturday. And then sometime around that time, the government decided that we'd work a 5-day week, so Saturday became a day off.
Okay. All right, that's
So
interesting.
Thursday was the half day. So you go up to Thursday, and half day would be Thursday.
And Friday now.
Friday was a working day.
Friday was
Saturday, half day Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can't remember the dates, years when that changed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a completely different sort of life then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was a cinema, Carib Cinema. That was one of the highlights. You go there and you sit down and watch his movies. And there was Bunty Roy, who was the manager. And if you were going to go upstairs, you had box, balcony, what was it underneath? House and pit. So
Well,
if
the
you had,
pit would be for those who don't have much money to.
right in the front. And if you had to go up to box
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't have a tie on, Mr. Roy had ties downstairs.
Are you
You
kidding?
would actually have to put a tie on before you were allowed to go upstairs. That is where Primo Cinema is.
Yes, Carib Cinema.
And then you had the boxes, and then on the house was at the and then it was a wonderful experience, because if there was one of these karate things, the whole congregation, not congregation, but the whole audience, every time they fired, they'd go, "Egat!" And then if the movie wasn't particularly interested, somebody would
No worries.
a big yawn, and they would flash their flashlight onto the clock as if to say, "Time to go home."
Time to go
Yeah,
home.
It's boring.
Oh my goodness, people were terrible back then.
Anyway. That's just a
Yes,
little
look,
side
I
line.
love that. I love that, Mr. Ed. It really gives us a good opportunity to sort of picture what life was like in Dominica back then, when probably many of us were not even born as yet. And tell us now, Mr. Ed, the journey that Wick Church went through under your leadership to today.
Okay, well,
You may choose to also incorporate the Maria experience and the COVID experience, for
right,
example.
yes. Well, it was a time of change. The unions were very, what was the word I want? Active.
Mhm.
Anthony Frederick Joseph, you had Dawu Awawu, and there is other people fighting for the workers, because it was a change in society and a change in social values. I remember one of the things that if you were a woman and you got pregnant and you went to have your baby, your employer could just tell you, "I'm sorry, you can't come back." Whether you were married or not, or whether you single and having a child, there was no guarantee that you would be allowed to come back.
All
Could
right,
come back.
there.
So that was one of the things. So there were a lot of those kinds of things which affected our business. And then you had strikes and what have you. But it was a very quiet period, I seem to remember. And we just got on with our business. The cruise ship business started before David, I think it was, where you'd have these German cruise companies, Russian ships chartered to German tour operators, and we probably have maybe 20 calls or something for the year. And it was interesting because, of course, communism and all that. And when these Russian ships were here, none of the crew or anybody were allowed to come ashore because, of course, for obvious reasons. And if the tender was coming ashore to bring the pilot back, or some official would had need to go on board, or the agent, there would be somebody sent on the tender to watch the seaman who was operating the thing. And they were always dressed in khaki and watching to see what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So if the person was going to jump ship and stay down. And that was the beginning of the cruise business. And I remember, I'm talking about shipping and tours now.
Yes, that element of the
Yes,
business.
it's not until 1987 when Carnival Cruise Line, the what was the boat? Say, my God, I forget that one, but it was a famous Italian captain, Captain Castellino. The schedule for that ship used to be Miami, I think Puerto Rico, St. Thomas and Martin, Antigua, Barbados. But he used to have a lot of trouble in Antigua because the authorities would never be there on time, and he warned them. And every time he passed Dominica, he sees this beautiful island. He said, I wonder what kind of places and so on. So when he warned the Antiguan people, if you didn't do what you're supposed to do, we're going to bypass you. And one we got a call saying that this ship is going to come here. And he liked what he saw.
So he bypassed
Antigua. And
Antigua.
he came in here on one occasion, and he said, I'm going to recommend to the company that they drop Antigua and put Dominica in its place, which he did in 1987. And they put us on a trial for a few months, and we did very, very well.
Awesome.
And that was the beginning of the cruise business. Because if the other lines would say, well, if Carnival can go to Dominica, there must be something there.
Right.
And that is the beginning of the beginning of the cruise ship business. And you can see what it is today.
Yes, definitely. And of course, clearly, you have played a major role within the tourism industry here in Dominica, with being an agent.
Right.
Tell us the role that your company played.
Well, we're the agent and tour operator, and as there are other tour operators, and it's a very important responsibility when you are the agent of a ship. It can be a cruise ship, it can be a cargo vessel, it can be a ferry, because you are the representative of that company in Dominica, and if anything goes wrong, you're the one that's supposed to come up and help and try to get things working. So we're very proud at where we are today. And personally, I remember before the headquarters of all these major lines are now in Florida, I used to go up to, by myself, to New York, where some of the offices were. This is before the worldwide cruise industry and walk around to the offices and try and get them to include Dominica. And then, of course, the companies realized the potential worldwide, and they moved down to Florida, and I used to go there at first by myself, and then, of course, the tourist board was getting stronger and stronger, and then, of course, we had delegations that used to go. So that's a very good business for us, but we need to have some better facilities now, because when you have a ship alongside in Rosa with 3,000 or 5,000 passengers and another 2,000 crew, it's too much. And the huge monster that is there. So we really need to do that, which I think the government is working on. So that's a cruise business, and of course a cargo ships.
Before we move on, again, just getting your point of view, for someone who played such a major role in enhancing and growing and developing the cruise business in Dominica, what would you like to see done to take it to the next level?
Well, I think the government already has, at least that's what I've been hearing, to have a plan to have a proper cruise village and some additional berths. Where it's going to be, I'm not sure it's down in Woodbridge Bay, outside of the center of Roseau, right? But you're close enough to the center to be able to walk to it. Where you have sort of a restricted area for the taxi drivers, for the vendors, a proper area. And we need to do that because we can't continue as we are right now. The Bayfront cannot take anymore. And the appearance is not what it should be. Really isn't. So that needs to be done. As I said, I'm not sure where it will be, but that needs to be done.
Do you have any recommendation of where it could be?
Well, I think...
Have you given it some thought?
There talk of down by where the Kingfield Airport is, down that area there we talk of that, where you have plenty of land and you could have a proper things, or down by the present Woodbridge Bay, the cargo port. But, I think there are various options are already.
You would just like to see it happen.
Yeah, it needs to happen.
It needs to happen, and it's sooner than later.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. So, other elements of the business.
Well, we were agents for Moritz, for Austin, but we quickly gave that up because we realized that if we had to do it properly, we would have to build our facilities, proper garage facilities.
To store the vehicles.
So we did, and then we started to concentrate more on the retail business, that is the supermarket and so on. So the supermarket in Rosa was built in 1975. Then what again? Various other agencies, things like Nestle and Diageo, which is whiskey, gin, so on, and I think various other things in that. Right then, of course, we started to handle the small aircraft that used to come in at Kingfield, and that company called Ground Handlers Limited has expanded, and we're now at Douglas Charles, and we handle most of the airlines that come in there, including American.
Awesome.
And we have about 40 people, I think it is, employed just to do that, and they're all being trained by American, by Caribbean Airlines, and so on. So that is a very good business. Difficult to get trained people, but at least we'll think. And as we keep telling the people that are there today that they're pioneers, because they are the people, when they look back on their life, they were the ones that dealt with the first direct flights from the United States. So that's that. Then we have insurance, of course, which is going through a transition period. Then there's Western Union and DHL. So all of these things came on as things came on. We dropped things that were not making money, and that there was no future for that.
But clearly, you were taking risks. You were taking.
This is a risk,
yeah.
Especially normally.
Yes.
You don't know. Because in the retail business, everybody's selling the same thing at the same price, the same surroundings. So you just have to be able to do something a little different, give better service, and so on. But the prices are more or less the same.
And so the supermarkets, we've seen as well go through changes, and you're actually now with IGA.
Yeah.
Tell us about the relationship with IGA.
It's International Grocers Association of the States, it's the United States, where you don't actually get any money, but the fact that you have that logo, it means that you maintain or reach a certain standard and you maintain that standard. But down at Kingfield, it's not an IGA supermarket. You choose if you want it or not.
Okay.
And sometimes some of the goods that you sell in those IGA goods, you're not allowed to sell.
Oh.
But there's a whole lot of other things that you can do.
Yes. So IGA is a brand. You don't have to pay them.
It's just an organization.
It's just an organization.
Yes. The fact that you are.
Do you have to sell there?
No.
Do they have a product line and so on? No. Okay.
It's just an organization that means that the fact you belong to them, you are of a certain standard and reputation.
You recently opened Big W. Congratulations on that. It's another step in business, another risk, taking. So congratulations on that. But I want to talk about the supermarket and business in general, as you would have gone through I don't know if you can go all the way back to, let's say, Hurricane David, but definitely more recent as
Well,
we...
David was a terrible experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, we survived because there were a number of staff who lived in Roseau who actually came out at night and protect that Wednesday night after the worst of the storm passed. A roof came across from the other side of the street. I don't know if it's where Brohim's place is. I'm not sure if it's that roof. And slammed, because at that time we had big glass showcase windows. And the staff came out and prevented people from going in to loot.
Bravo.
Wonderful, yeah. So we actually badly damaged and so on, but we were able to start up.
Okay.
And of course, when people started coming from the country areas, were devastated, very big and stuff and what have you.
Okay.
So that was a major problem with us, and of course, fortunately, the building stood up, and but it was not as an expensive hurricane as Maria, because there were not so many buildings and infrastructure in 1979 as there was in Maria's time.
2017.
For example, where we lived at Eggleston, it took a year and a month before we got electricity.
Wow.
Because the whole country was in a state of collapse, because don't forget there were all that social problems in the late 70s before the hurricane came, so there was no proper government and there were strikes and all the things that you're all familiar with.
But then Hurricane Maria came
that's a different
in 2017.
We were more organized because we have all these wonderful gadgets and so on. But at the end of it, what I will remember is the fact of the looting. When they finished with the church, including the supermarket, the wholesale at the back, and if don't talk about cane field, we didn't have anything to sell, Nothing to sell. Bills to pay. What are we going to do? And it was frightening, because we did not know from one day to the other what we were going to do. The place was, as you know, everybody was very much affected. And it was one or two companies that gave us a little credit, like Carrot Bear and so on. Because the supermarket, as we see it today, when water came back in Roseau, and there was some semblance of life getting back, we just opened the front door, opened the back door, and just hosed everything out and loaded the rubbish on the trucks. There was one big gaping building, because that's what we had to do. There was no fixing of the shelves because everything was mashed up. Then, of course, the wholesale. And I couldn't go down to Rosa for several days, but my children, when they came down, they just watched people in the wholesale just looting. You had the police there,
and they couldn't do anything.
They just couldn't do anything. And that is something that will stick with the fact that we were able to shake ourselves and say we have people to responsible for 100 and whatever it is, people who rely on us. We can't just turn our back and whatever we have going to Timbuktu or
you couldn't be defeatist. You couldn't be
so
defeatist.
We came back, and then it's rough. It was rough, very rough.
How long did it take you to get things back up and running? And how were you able to do
we were
it?
going along fine, and then until, of course, COVID came along, and that put a spoke in the wheel, so to speak, and we sort of had to slow down.
But somebody might say, Mr. Ed, people need to eat, though, even if there's COVID.
Yes, but what about all the other things that we had? Eating is one thing. You have to pay to bring the stuff in, where certain things like the services that you do, people pay for the services, but you don't have to put money out. So that, but then by the middle of last year it was there when COVID was more or less over. We're getting back, so it'll be another couple of years or so, because we're still feeling the effects of it.
Well, the tourism related element of your business definitely would have been affected significantly.
Yes, well, the airlines airlines were not coming in. Insurance, yes, because people had insurance claims, but services, the side on Dominica, which is bringing people in, that was not functioning. What again, I think most of the things were not working, so it was just the food part of it that kind of kept things ticking over.
As a businessman who had been the head of this business, and Hurricane Maria comes and does that, then COVID comes along. Do you just put your hands on your head and say, "Weep about Jay? What am I going to do?"
You had Erica, although Erica didn't affect us to this
so much.
And 2 years later, you had Maria. But before Erica, you had other storms and so on. So one wonders now, it is 2023. What is going to come now? Is something else going to come and mess it up? Because if you look at Dominica's history, it's up and down, you know.
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down.
Every other year almost. And the hurricane season begins soon, on the 1st of June.
On the 15th of today, they put out all their different things that they're going to be doing. That is the meteorological companies and so on. I was reading today that they're hoping that El Nino, which is a phenomenon that is good because it prevents the westerly winds from blowing across. Anyway, we just have to see what happens.
We just have to see.
But we live in a little island that has full of drama.
We're taking a break. We're coming right back. This is the In the Spotlight radio show featuring Gerry, and it's already 9:45. It's getting to 9:45, and we're talking some more when we come back.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, and aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of all people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, public servants, youth, the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight, we'll also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m.
And we are back. We are back, Mr. Ed.
Thanks, ma'am.
I suspect I have you up a little late tonight.
Yes, long after my bedtime.
Yes, don't worry. We're almost towards 10 o'clock. Post Hurricane Maria, we're going to talk about you and your contribution to community. As you said, growing up, your grandparents taught you honesty. They taught you to care for others and so on. Probably just in a bit of probably a few of the things that you've made a contribution to where community and people are concerned.
Well,
your company does a lot, I know.
Yeah, well,
yes, and of course that would be through your guidance and through your spearheading as well.
But sometimes,
what are those that stand out to you?
Well, individual helping. Like the other day, just last week, I was walking somewhere around my supermarket, and so a guy came up to me and said, "Hi, hello. You remember me?" I said, "No, I'm not sure. Help me." He said, "You paid for my schooling in the States or something." I said, "Really?" That's the kind of thing.
Oh my!
So I forget. I forget those things. I don't always remember. So things like that. Of course, all the feast days and things like that. Difficult to remember. Just giving.
Of course, it's part of you. It's part of your heart. Yeah. That's what you.
My family too. My children are very much like that.
Yes. And can we just give them a little props? They're the children.
Yes. Well, as I said, I retired at the end of 2022.
So you officially retired?
Yes, but I have been coming in more than I got because I still have to handle a lot of things. And of course, I was not well for 8 weeks with this thing, this leg. So that put me back a bit. But Jason is the managing director. Damon is in charge of the airports and Western Union DHL. So already is into tourism and so on. They're all there doing it. So the functions have been divided amongst them. Of course, we have a very good staff. We have a lot of people who have been there for many years who are very reliable, and I don't call any names because if I call them,
you're going to get in trouble.
So to answer your question,
you've made your contribution.
Just help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone just sent me a message and they said Mr. Ed brought Air Guadeloupe to Dominica. I don't know if he spoke about it already. I worked at Melville Hall. That was my first job.
Really? Okay, remember Air Guadeloupe, Air Martinique used to come in at, they had these little jet things that they came in at, used to come in at Canefield when Canefield already had flights coming in,
Mr. Ed, post-Hurricane Maria, the government of Dominica established a National Reconstruction Task Force, and that was led by former President Elwood Williams. You were part of that task force. What was the job? What did you guys have to do?
Looking at agriculture, tourism, and so on, tossing ideas around. Spent a lot of time, and there was a report submitted, but maybe some of the things that we put in the report have in fact been used or included in government policy over the last several years. But we did a lot of work. On that, and I've been on those committees for a long, DIC, DEF. I was president of DEF during the problems, the social issues going up to Hurricane David, and the Tourist Board, then the NDC, and Discover Dominica, Invest Dominica, what again? I think I served time on the NBD board, but I didn't stay there for too long. Miss Charles put me on that, but I didn't stay there. When she had a way of saying, I'll never forget, I was sitting in the old office one day, and she came upstairs, and the secretary, and said, Miss Charles, I had to see you. She came in, she said, "Bro, have you done for Sweden?" I said, Miss Charles, for Sweden? Yes, I want to put your name up to being the consul for Sweden. I said, well, fine, it is going to help. So there was that.
So for you, is how you could help.
Yeah.
How you could make a contribution. And if you could make a contribution, then okay.
Right, so that was that. And there were other things like that. With NBD, I didn't stay there too long because I realized I was competing with many of the businesses who were bank customers who were asking for facilities and so on, and I just could not. The honesty to think, well, I'm going to give somebody this, that they're going to use it against me. So I thought, no, I can't really be in that. That's not being honest.
And you left.
Yeah, it wasn't for very long.
Yeah.
I just realized I couldn't with all honesty, say I would give an honest answer.
What about recognitions, Mr. Ed? What level of recognitions have you received for your contribution?
Cicero Award of Honor.
Cicero Award of Honor.
1995.
That's a huge one.
I think it was the last parade in the gardens. It was Liverpool, I think, was the president. It was myself, Lestrade, and was it Dr. There's three of us anyway, and that was in the Botanical Gardens.
And I'm sure along the way, many others have.
Yeah, well, I was a Rotarian for a number of years, and when David came along, once again, you could not allowed to miss meetings. And I just realized that what I had on my plate, it just didn't make sense. So I had to leave that, but I was given the Paul Harris Fellow, so I'm one of those things. And other bits and pieces over the years, which I treasure. I have one of the things I want to do. I have bits of paper, documents, pictures, tote bag in boxes that in at my home. And I started during COVID, when my family told me, and children told me, don't you dare leave your home. COVID is on your 18, whatever, something.
Don't want you to get sick.
I started to go through, and I would like to finish that. All bits of scrapbook, put things in order. That's sort of a hobby.
And one of the things that you have become very, very well known for, it's those calendars.
Oh yes, that's a personal hobby I have of collecting material on Dominica, historical material, books, paintings, postcards, and so on. And I've been doing the calendar since 1978 or 79. But in 78, I have
that's over 40 years.
I have copies of all of them, and it started off like a one-page thing, and eventually ended up. But I'm running out of colored postcards, and I still have some stuff there, but I will continue to do that.
I think people appreciate that. I am sure there are persons who collect them.
Yes, they do.
I mean, that is so important. I mean, you see pictures of from 19 there, and it's...
Most of them are 1910 photographs.
1910?
Postcards, yes. And we always keep back a fair number so that when Dominicans come for Carnival or occasions like that...
They come looking for them.
Come looking for it, yes.
Yes, good job with that, Mr.
And they're very useful because they have the phases of the moon, they have the public holidays, although I told Ms. Barrett the other day, that the phases of the moon are too small, you can hardly read it.
You need them to be bigger.
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Ed, it's 9:56. Wow. You are 80 years old. What is still there to be done? What is still there to be accomplished?
Well, I try to be a quiet advocate. I don't like trouble. I don't like debate. I like quarrel.
You don't like melee.
If something I think is wrong, I will call the person and say, well, this I don't think it's right. Some of them nowadays you don't answer the telephone. You say, go. I don't have any particular position, but I just don't want this little island of ours to just disintegrate and we lose our heart. There are lots of good people around who try their best, and I really appreciate when things go well. But so to answer your question, I would try to do, and what is the word I want? Influence. Whatever the influence. If I think something is wrong, and make my comments, and hopefully it might make sense. Not everything I want is right. That, and I would like to see the country cleaned up. We cannot, as I keep telling people, you cannot be pushing Nature Island of the Caribbean when you have when I just go down that road. But you know what I'm trying to say? It hurts my heart to see rivers polluted and so on by people who are going to enjoy themselves there, and they don't think of people who might come afterwards for a river bath, what they have to step over and pick up and all this. Stop it. Stop
So
it.
you're passionate about the environment
Yes,
and keeping
yes.
Dominica green and clean. Yes.
Because I sometimes think 50 years from now, what are the rivers going to be like? Are they going to have water in them? Or are we going to be left with just a few, one or two? I don't know. But it's what we do now, how we behave. And I notice the government have a lot of things they're going into now, of green this and green that. And so that is excellent, but then they need to get it to everybody, not just to them to talk about it. So that's my worry, but as I said, I will continue to be concerned if I can.
How would you summarize this 80-year-old life? Highlights, lowlights, as we wrap up.
Well, I was in it. I was born in colonialism. I went through all the ups and downs, the social upheaval that most countries would take a century to do. We did it in a few years, and up to independence. And being part of it, being a voice, and was able to blend, to do whatever in my own way, because I was in the different positions that I held over the years, and because I had a business that is considered. I'll never forget, this is a strange thing, but on the morning of Maria, we were downstairs in the supermarket. We opened, despite the government said to close, but a lot of people had no food, in the sense that the week before they did big shopping because that other storm was coming. So we said we can't do. We don't know how long this thing is going to be. So we stayed open, and we had two litter bins outside, the green things. And I said I said to my good friend Latouche, who cleans around everything.
Yes.
Latouche, go and just put them inside. You never know. When we come back on Thursday or so, we'll come back on Thursday.
Well, Mr. Ed, let me tell you, you would not come back on Thursday.
No way.
Litter bins were gone with the wind.
No, they were inside.
They were inside?
Yeah, that's why I put them inside.
Okay, you got to put them inside.
Yes.
Okay. All right. It is 10 o'clock, the time in the studios here of Q95 FM Radio, and I don't think that I could have asked for a better guest tonight to observe the 10th anniversary of the In the Spotlight radio show. I learned quite a bit, and give us some. I'm seeing the hats, so give us some hats. I really think Mr. Ed deserves all of those hats that they're giving some hats on the Facebook live. So I could not have asked for a better guest, and this conversation that we had tonight, I really truly appreciate, Mr. Ed. I know you were very reluctant, you were very resistant to do the program, and he said to me, I'll come, you ask me the questions and we do the program. And it was so effortless though, Mr.
Well, I find the 2 hours went very quickly, and thank you for your lead and your joviality, and you make people want to speak.
That's it, sir.
One thing I did not mention, talking about tourism. You probably knew your father was secretary of the Dominica Taxi Association. And we have supported them, and they have supported us for all these years.
Yes.
And it was always a pleasure to work with him.
Thank
and
you.
He was there all the time.
You'd be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I just thought
and I know that you always engage the cultural group as well.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yes, you always engage the cultural group to perform. So thank you for that support as well that you provided, Mr. Ed. You did put some food in my mouth as well, if we want to put it that way. Gerry Ed, businessman, and so many other things. I really, really am happy for how our program went this evening. And I appreciate you, sir. You said don't stay away from this, sir, but I truly appreciate you, and I want to thank you. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to give some final comments and we wrap up.
Well, just to say, I'm happy I was born here. I'm happy that I've lived in this place. We criticize it all the time, but when you look around the rest of the world, we are very, very lucky to be where we are. And thank you for getting me to come. And thank those people who are sending me
those hearts.
Hearts,
yes. Definitely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on our special anniversary program, 10 years on the air of the In the Spotlight radio show, coming full circle tonight with the final of the three who inspired the program on that day in 2013 when the DAIC kindly asked that I host their annual general meeting, and here we are today. I pray that we can continue to have many more years of the In the Spotlight radio show. As long as I'm able to, I will continue. I want to encourage you to follow our In the Spotlight radio show page, become a fan of our fans page, IT In the Spotlight radio show fans, and also, to participate. Although we did the observance program tonight, we're using the month of May as a celebratory month. So we'll continue with our giveaways and all that good stuff that we're doing via the page. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support over the last 10 years. It has been a pleasure doing this, whether I'm tired, whether I'm not, and I try my best to come here. And when I'm not able, I pray that you also understand as well. Thank you to Angostura Fine Foods Inc. for providing us with our 5-year-old Angostura single barrel rum. We thank Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited. We thank the Great Old House, and we thank Pamplemousse Goodies and Services for our contributions tonight. We will be back next week, Monday, God willing. As I said, continue to follow our social media platforms and continue to participate in our activities. Until next week, Monday, thank you so much again. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ed. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did and as much as the listeners and fans did. Good night, everyone. See you next time.
Wow. Thank you.